Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the day three of AZ-900 Microsoft Azure Bootcamp. And in today's session, our speaker is Shreyan, and Shreyan is a Gold Microsoft Student Ambassador. Also, he is co-founder at 2019 and also participated in my Microsoft Ideathon 2020 and Microsoft Engage 2020. Microsoft Head Lead first runner up. So let's welcome our speaker Shreyan.
Thanks a lot,
Yeah, hi
Rupesh.
Shreyan,
Thanks
how
a
are you?
lot. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks a lot for that
Yeah,
sweet introduction. Um, yeah, so can we start with
yeah.
the session?
Thank you. So you what?
Perfect. Thank you. Let me know if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Perfect. All right, guys. So, welcome to the day three of this AZ-900 bootcamp. And today is, of course, the last day of this bootcamp. But I hope this was a good journey so far. And let's see what we have got in the agenda today. And just to give you a quick recap of what we have done yesterday and the day before yesterday. So, on day one, we saw what is cloud. We saw the basics of how cloud works, what is cloud, what are the advantages of cloud, what are the different types of cloud, and what are the different types of services that cloud offers us. And then we just spoke how is Microsoft Azure playing a pivotal role here, and what exactly is Microsoft Azure, and how to log in, how to create a resource, what is a resource, what's a resource group. We saw a couple of hierarchies, and then we saw a couple of regions and the region pairs and the geography, what are all those things. So we had a brief discussion around that, and then we also saw what is data center, how does a data center look like, and all those other things, right? So this was a quick recap of day one. And in day two, we saw what are the different resources. We spoke a lot about IoT, we spoke a lot about DevOps, we spoke a little about AI, we spoke something about all the other services. Then in the end, I just spoke something in very short about defense in depth, how is your data secure, and we had all those teeny tiny discussions around. And then I showed you a demonstration of the same, right? And I also shared how had I utilized Azure as a student, and even for all those projects or in a hackathon, how did I actually utilize Azure for that. So with all these things, we had wrapped up our day one and day two, and let's see what do we have in day three. Before moving ahead, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Shayan Fernandez, currently a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. I've worked in a startup. I was a co-founder there, and I've interned at organizations like KPMG and uh, Microsoft. And then I'm a hackathon enthusiast. I've participated in various national and international level hackathons and bagged a few accolades, and not just the ones from uh, schools, colleges, but also from organizations like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and all these things. And then I'm an MTA certified in Python, and I also love to document my work, my experiences that I had. And you can find them on Microsoft Tech Community as well. I've published a blog there on how my experience was with one of the hackathon, what did I do, and how was my team, what did the team work look like, and all those things, right? So you can find all those blogs, and I love to document them. And then I'm also a global speaker. I love to share knowledge on all the domains of interest that work on. And with that, we come to what's my domains of interest. So I've worked in artificial intelligence, under machine learning, on all those stuffs, right? So I've worked in AI, I've worked on blockchain. So blockchain is something that I'm currently working on as well. And then I've worked on DevOps a little bit. All those uh, tools underlying in the DevOps, because DevOps is a practice, but of course there are a lot of tools underlying there. So I've worked on that, and then I've also worked with the web dev technologies, and then the extended reality, where you can see that there are three other subdivisions, right? AR, VR, and MR. So I've worked in all of them, and then I've been into cloud computing for a long time now. And then I've worked on projects with IoT robotics, including the microcontrollers and the microprocessors. So, and then I kind of like to speak more about the low code platform, and I love to work more in the low code platform. So through which that I started working on the Microsoft Power Platform, and I have submitted a couple of connectors there which you all can use. So with that, if you would like to get in touch with me, so definitely you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn ID. And then if you want to see the work that I do, so definitely feel free to check out my GitHub repository. And if you wish to read my blogs that I write, so you can check them out as well on dev.to. So this is a simple introduction about me. So let's see, what do we have in agenda today, right? So what do we have in store? So firstly, we'll see what are Azure Identity Services, and then we'll see when to set up cloud governance, why are compliance privacy on Azure so special, where to plan and manage costs, right? So we'll have a little bit discussion around the cost thing, because that is something which every one of us is bothered about, right? So how much does it cost to run a cloud service? So we'll speak a little bit on that, and how to choose the right Azure services with the SLA. So we'll speak all these things in today's um, this session. Not sure how long we have, because all these things are something that you'll have to read and understand more. But I'll try my best to make sure that you guys follow up in today's session with me. But in case if you need any more references, so then I will be giving them as well towards the end of this session. So without further delay, so let's now get familiar with two terms, right? What is authentication and what is authorization? Because these two terms actually are very much needed to be understood. We had a couple of basic discussion like this yesterday around APIs and stuff. So today, such two words that I'll be using here would be authentication and authorization. Before that, let me just check if my slide has changed. Yes, right. So what is authentication? So if anyone of you have heard, I'm pretty sure that all of us must have heard about this word authentication a lot of times, right? So even if you go to a website, it asks you to authenticate yourself first, or then before signing up, some have that thing. So this is a process of establishing the identity of a person or a service that wants to access the resource. Let's say you want to log into that particular website, right? So you need to identify yourself that yes, this is me. For example, if I'm Shreyan logging into Microsoft Azure, so Azure needs to identify, yes, this is Shreyan in that case, right? So how can it identify? Basically, we use a password and an ID, right? So that is a way of authentication. Next, what does it involve, right? So you have to have your credentials. That's what it says. Uh, Challenging a party for legitimate credentials. So if I give a wrong password, then I'm not able to authenticate myself. So this is how authentication looks like, and it establishes the user of who they say they are. For example, I can just go to Azure and say, okay, I have, I belong to some organization, but Azure can only identify that only by logging in. So if I belong to this organization of student ambassadors, I cannot use my Outlook ID to log in there, right? So let's say Shreyan at outlook.com, for example. I cannot use this ID to log into my organizational work on Azure, although both of the IDs are like handled by me. But to authenticate myself, I need to have that particular ID logged into that particular account. So basically, this is what I mean by saying that it establishes who the person says he actually is. And then now let's move on to the next thing, what is authorization? Because now, since we are very much clear with what authentication is, now let's see what is authorization, because authentication and authorization sometimes may confuse you a lot, right? So authentication is something which establishes your identity, but authorization is like it gives you a level of access, right? So to explain, it is a process of establishing what level of access an authenticated person or service has. Let's say I log into this particular Azure account that I was talking about, right? So if I log into that, I'm not there are some things which I'm not authorized to do, right? So for example, if I have multiple projects, so let's say I've been given a role in just one of the projects from student ambassadors community. So now I cannot go into the others project. Let's say person now Shreyan has been working on this. Let's say some other colleague of mine has working on a different project. Now what I do, I'll be like, okay, I want to see what is going on in the other project. So I cannot go there and see because I'm not authorized to see that project on Azure. So although I can log in, I'm authenticated, but I'm not authorized enough to see the other projects that are going on. So there's a small line here which differentiates both. So this is what exactly authentication and authorization means, right? So it, on the other hand, this particular authorization, it specifies what data they're allowed to access and what can I do with it. As I told you, I cannot go to another person's code and I cannot alter that code because I'm not authorized even to view that code. Forget editing, I'm not even authorized to view that code. So this is how you can differentiate authorization and authentication. I hope this is clear. I won't bore you much with uh, more details on that because I'm pretty sure that you must have followed. Now let's see in a very layman terms how it looks like. For example, Robin Danielson from Tailwind Traders. So this is her authentication. So she's authenticated into this particular platform. But when it comes to authorization, so she should have, let's say she is not allowed to access data. So although here it shows you all three are ticked, but let's say she is not allowed to see the data. So in that case, you can say she is not authorized to see the data, but she has the authorization to use the apps and resources and also to manage the access levels. So that was what I was talking about. Now how can you do this using, now let's say, identity services? So these two lie under this umbrella of identity services. So how can you do that? So Azure Active Directory, or in short, we call it as AAD. So this is the entity that provides you with this identity services, and you can add, if the person is in your Azure Active Directory. So you can enable your users to sign in, or let's say you're an admin in this case. So you can add those people to the AAD, and then they can sign in and then access the cloud applications and the applications that are also developed on cloud. So all these things can be authorized using uh, the Azure Active Directory. So this is why I spoke a lot about authentication and authorization till now, so that you will understand what exactly does Azure Active Directory do, right? So one such thing is that authorization. And now let's say you, when you secure your identities on AD, for example, I was working on a project with blockchain for a couple of days ago. So what happened? I created an application, but many of them were not able to join my particular application, or in order to use that application, they were forbidden. So whenever they used to open that particular link, it showed, okay, you're forbidden to use this application. Now I didn't know the reason back then because that was a I was very new back then. So what happened was, finally I discovered that they were not in my organization. So if you know, I mean, if you belong to any college, so you cannot let others access your thing, right? So even you yourself cannot access your account if you do not belong to that organization. So what happened in my case was, this person, that my friend that I had shared the link with, he was not in my organization. So as soon as he clicked on that, it was showing that he is not allowed. So then what I had to do, I had to go to my AAD and then add this user. So this is what I'm saying. When you secure identities on premises with Azure Active Directory, Microsoft doesn't monitor sign-in attempt. So that's when his sign-in attempt was not monitored. It was directly allowed to enter the link. Uh, that was one. And for example, Azure Active Directory can detect sign-in attempts from unexpected locations or unknown devices. This is what I was talking till now, because that device was also not registered, nor that ID was registered. Till I added that particular ID, I couldn't. He couldn't access that particular application. Uh, then Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management. Again, if you are an IT professional who's planning to give, let's say, your company has this thing, or your organization is working on a project, and only, like, let's say, five or six of your engineers are working on that. So what you can do, you can collect those IDs, let's say xyz.com, and then you can add them to your Azure Active Directory if the whole project is going on Azure. So just to make sure that only these many people have the identity, although I also, even others, like this, not the six, let's say there's a seventh person, and even if he's belonging to the same organization, he shouldn't have the access to this particular code base or this particular project that is being hosted on Azure Active Directory. I mean the Microsoft Azure, right? So Azure Active Directory is your lifesaver here. With Azure Active Directory, you can control the identity accounts, but Microsoft ensures that the service is available globally, right? So this again, this service has some uh, restrictions, but Microsoft ensures that this service is available globally. Now, who uses Azure AD? Now, I was talking a lot about Azure Active Directory. How did I use it? So now, who actually uses it, right? As I told you, the first case, your IT administrators. For example, if you're working in an organization, so you'll have a separate IT team. So this team is solely responsible for managing the softwares and all the other things. Although this is only at an organizational level, and if you are handling the project end to end for it, let's say your final year project, so you actually can also use it. So that's where the next set of users come in, and who are called as the app developers. Even app developers have access only if they have that not in that particular organization, if they don't belong to any organization, because usually in organizational level it is handled by the IT admins. Now if an app developer is solely working, let's say he's a freelancer and he has his own thing, so that's when even app developers can use it. And then the next thing is the users and online service subscribers. So all these people are actually in direct use with the Azure Active Directory. What services does this Azure Active Directory provide? So it can give you authentication services, it can give you a single sign on, and which is also known as the SSO service, if you have not heard about it. And then the application management and also the device management. Device management, as in you can add the devices or you can remove the devices in that case, right? So even again for applications, if you want some application to be under AAD, you can add them. For example, my blockchain application was under AAD. Now, this is a very good question. Now, I spoke so much about Azure Active Directory. So, how can I actually connect? Right. So, this is how you connect. So, you can even go to the your cloud environment, the Azure environment, and you can find your Azure Active Directory. I'll not bore you with this theory here, because I'll show you practically how can you connect it. Right. So, Windows Server Active Directory. This is for on-premises environment, and Azure Active Directory will be on the Azure's cloud environment. So you have Azure AD Connect, and then you can connect that. But I won't bore you much. I'll just directly show you how it looks on Azure in a while. Now with that, I hope you guys are clear till here. So if you guys want me to go slow, then I'll definitely go a little slower here. But if you are okay with the speed, give me a heads up so that I can continue. I'll just give you 5 minutes, if I mean just 2 minutes of time. So if you have any doubts, you can just float them in, or else I'll assume that you are following up with me, and I'll continue with the session. Um, I cannot see the comments, I guess. Okay, if you guys do have any doubts, please feel free to let like float them around. I cannot actually see the thing here, but okay. No, yeah.
Yeah, currently there is no questions, so you can move ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the heads up. So now after this, the next thing that I would like to discuss here is the multi-factor authentication. So I just spoke about authentication. So now maybe some of you might be able to understand what exactly does multi-factor authentication be. So again, just to explain, because all these might be asked in your AZ-900 as well. So multi-factor authentication is a process where a user is prompted during the sign-in process for an additional form of identification. So, what can be this identification? It can be your OTP, right? Or it can be a OTP SMS, a flash SMS, or a call, or or an email. So it can be anything where you get a particular thing. For example, I don't know how many of you have used this, But there is also a way where they ask you what was the they ask you a couple of questions, for example. So there is a question which I have seen: what is the registration number of your first vehicle, and then what's your pet's name? And so, like, there are these kind of questions that they ask you. This is all just to make sure that you are the person who are logging in, because now let's say your ID is hacked, so doesn't mean the person should directly get in and access your account. So to avoid all these things, so there is a next step which is called the multi-factor authentication. So there are three categories here: something the user knows, for example the car thing, as I explained, right? So if you have a car, only you know what was your first car's number, or someone around you knows it. Then something the user has, for example, what you have, for example the OTP, right? The OTP, or the phone, or something like that, the call on your phone. So something, all these factors come under your what the user has. And then what something the user is, you can say like a captcha, for example a captcha, just to make sure that you are the user and you're not a robot. Captcha is something that many websites have inculcated these days, because there were multiple unwanted things that were happening. So you can identify yourself that yes, I'm not a robot and I'm a human. So you will be asked to there are many ways. The simplest one that I have come across is it will ask you to give a checkbox that yes, I'm not a robot. But some don't stop there, some go ahead and they'll be like, okay, just tick the checkbox and then we'll give you a question again. So identify the zebra crossings, or identify the signals, or identify the boat in these pictures. So all these things comes under the multi-factor authentication. So this is what your multi-factor authentication is. And then now this is multi-factor authentication. Now let's move to the next topic: what is the conditional access? So conditional access is more or like a tool that AAD uses to allow, or in a case for let's say deny, right? So not just allowing, or to deny access to resources based on the identity signals. So what are these signals? These signals include who the user is, where the user is, and what the device user is requesting access from. For example, if I log in to my Outlook account, for example, what happens is at times I log in through my PC, or sometimes when I'm outside and I have to see an important email, I log in through my phone. So now what happens? The device is changed, right? So I get a mail that, hey, I have seen this particular device logging in from here. So just verify, is this you? So this is like a conditional access. Now, if you verify, yes, that is me, that is when you will be allowed to enter that particular email. Or if you fail to verify, then you can't access. Because many a times for my Facebook account, I have got these requests to this to you know identify whether it is me or not. So what I have done, I've given a no, because those were not the requests that I had made. So this is how your conditional access works. And again, this is something your Azure Active Directory has. And not just this, your IP address is also a factor here. Your address, where your location is. I can go to, let's say, from my place, I move to UK, for example. So if I log in from there, again, that whole location is changing. So I'll have to again verify myself that yes, it is me. So conditional access, what is the use now? I just told you, okay, this is what conditional access means. So what is the use? It empowers the users to be productive wherever and whenever. Because see, firstly, it is a useful thing, because if let's say I'm traveling and if I want to work, if I want to answer my emails, so that is when I can use my mobile and not my laptop, right? So again, if I don't allow my users to do that, somewhere I'm hindering them to do their duty. So this is where your conditional access is giving you a lot of benefit. Next thing, let's say you have a malicious attempt or a hacker logging in. So you can protect your organization's assets, be it your projects, be it your code. I'm sorry. So be it your code or all those things, right? You can control all these things using the conditional access. So this is where your conditional access majorly. But again, if you guys can just think of any other things, there are a lot more other things where conditional access can benefit you, right? So, I mean, if you come to your personal account, so you can prevent them from hacking itself. So, uh, this conditional access is useful for many times. So this is what I've shown here: signal, decision, and enforcement. So firstly, your devices send signals, and then the decision lies whether you're allowed to log in or you're allowed to go ahead. If yes, you're allowed to go in front. If not, you're terminated right from there. And then comes the enforcement. Now, that was about conditional access. Now, I would like to talk about another important kind of access. It is called the role based access control, or you can abbreviate it as RBACs. So, you might have heard of this term if you're an IT professional. I'm pretty sure you might have heard here, but if you are not, so no issues, we have got you covered here. So, role based access control is kind of self explanatory. You assign the control to a person based on the role he's in. Let's say I have a project going on, so I have a couple of quality analyst team. I have a couple of people working on the back end team. I have a couple of people working on the front end team. So what I do, the back end guys need not access the QA portal or the other portal, right? The front end portal, because all they have to do is test their code in the back end and act accordingly. So now what I do, let's say I am working in the backend team. So I will be only given access for the backend portal that I have, all those backend tools that I need, right? I won't be given anything else. Now, why is this done? Doesn't the company trust you? No, just to avoid confusions here and there. So this is a thing that organizations follow, this role based access control. Or let's say you're working on a project in a online mode, for example, and your friend is located somewhere else, and you, let's say four of you are actually working on a small hackathon. Now what you do, you can give access, you can create a whole application. Let's say you have created four resources: SQL database, web app, IoT thing. Now maybe the guy who's working on IoT might not be working with the database, or if he's working with the database, he might not be working with the front end, right? So you can restrict him there so that he'll also not get confused, right? So when there are three other people here, one is owner, reader, and contributor. When you assign the owner role to a user at the management group scope, that particular person or that particular user can manage everything in all subscription within that management group. If you want to know more about what exactly management group is, what exactly subscriptions is, so you can refer to our day one of the bootcamp, because that is where we are discussed what is that hierarchy of management group, what are subscriptions. And if you have been following up from day one, so definitely you will be able to understand this better, what exactly is subscription, right? So I had shown you what my subscription is, what subscription you will get if you are a student, or what subscription you will get if you are an individual who's just trying out Azure. So this is how your subscriptions and management group works. So you can manage everything if you're the owner, right? So you can manage subscriptions, but again, not going out of the management group, you will be within the management group. Now let's say if you're assigned as a reader, right? So what role are you doing? So this is assigned to someone group at the subscription scope. So you will be in the scope of the subscription. So again, follow that hierarchy, you'll understand. And the members of this group can view every resource and resource within the subscription. So firstly, I told you multiple subscriptions, but now it is under a single subscription. Now let's say you're a contributor. So this is the third kind of a role, right? So to an application at the resource group scope, again, your group level comes down. So if you remember from that tree that I had shown you on first day, right? So there was a hierarchy tree. So first you have within the management group you can do. Now let's say if you come down within the subscription you can do. Now let's say the next phase you can just do within a resource group, because you just are allowed to work in that particular resource group and nothing else, but you cannot go to any other resource group within the subscription. Again, the umbrella for you here is the subscriptions. So this is how you can assign a role based access control. Again, it is very simple. Based on the role, you give the control to the user. So again, three types of roles here: owner, reader, and contributor. So this is what your RBAC in a nutshell means. So if you want to, I know these all things are more of like a theory today, but don't worry, I'll try to show this to you in action if time permits, right? So again, the same thing. Here you can see a role versus a scope. So a reader has these things: subscription, resource group, and resource, right? So it's an automated process for resource. The owner is like the admin and all those things. So this is what I was explaining all this while. So role versus scope, and then you can just mix and match things, and then you can understand. Now let's see how is the access control happening. So this is how it looks like on your Azure portal, right? And name, app name, value, what is the resources up getting, cost center, this thing, virtual machine owner, what is the value of that, and what is he getting, and all these things, the impact. Now Microsoft Trust Center empowerment, again this is a trust center. Like now we spoke about everything, all those other things that we had to. Now let's see what does Microsoft Trust Center have. I'll not show you much in detail here, because this is just a thing to tell you that yes, this exists. How does Microsoft uh, uphold your trust, right? So how do they have their things in place, the security, privacy, compliance, and all those other things in place, so that you can have your hassle-free deployment on cloud. So I'll just show this particular portal to you in a while. Then there is Azure Government as well. So this is an again a service which is offered by Microsoft. You can um get your world-class security protection and compliance on this. You can modernize your infrastructure to flexible and a hybrid environment. Give your workloads capacity when and where you need it. It's not like some resources getting used and it is getting wasted. So definitely not like that. You can do everything. Basically, you head the whole thing, right? Then this is something Azure Cognitive Service, speech service, right? So this is another what do you say, like a service that is available to you. If I'm not wrong, this is only in the Chinese region, right? So you can see here, is it Azure Global or China? This belongs to the Chinese region. So this is Microsoft Azure. This is not a service which is operated exclusively by Microsoft, but it is operated by 21 ViaNet, another organization, right? So it has partnered with Microsoft to give you this service. Now, this major thing that you were looking forward, what is a calculator, TCO calculator, right? So you can define your workloads, you can adjust the assumptions, and then finally you can view your report. It's not like you can waste it. So what is your total cost of your ownership? I'll just show this to you because the link is available here. I'll just show this to you in a while. And this is the link for the pricing calculator. I'll show you how is pricing done, because I won't spend more time on the slides here, because this is something that it will be very handy to me if I explain it to you on the portal itself, right? So with that, I will not waste much time here on the slides, because I know you must be better than me in theory here. But let's see how can things help you out practically, right? So give me a moment. I'll just switch my screen. um, right. So again, if you are not familiar, no issues. So this is how your Azure portal looks like, right? Once you go to portal.azure.com, let me just check, right? So if you go to portal.azure.com, this is how you can see, this is your interface. So you can see your account on the top. Won't waste much time here, because I have shown what is Azure. I've given you a tool. So now today I am bothered about Azure Active Directory. So I'll just log into that. I mean, I just use that thing and show you. So you can see the overview here, right? And you can see the number of users. My internet, I guess. Give me a second. Let me refresh this page. Okay, on the left hand side, you can see the number of users. If you have added any users, you can see the number of users. Then if you have groups, you can see them. And you have roles and admins, you have administrative units, you have what just happened? Give me a moment. See, on the top it says student ambassadors group. So this is the groups that within what we hold within our community. So it can be a different across your organization as well. I'm sorry, I had to switch that screen because I'm not allowed to show that. But that's why I'll just show you on this left hand side whatever is there, right? So you have what are the applications and what are the devices, all those devices are here. So even my device also might be in this, right? What is your identity governance? What is application proxy? What are the licenses? And as I told you, you can connect your local thing, right? You can connect your local thing to the cloud, right? So let's say you have something hosted locally, right? So you want to give yourself an Azure Active Directory thing to that as well. So how can you do that? If you don't remember, in the slide there was a slide, right? Two boxes: on premises environment on and on the cloud environment, right? So you can do this as well. So how will you do that? In between I've written something called as the Azure AD Connect. So that is also available to you here on your left hand side. So here you can see what is the name, overview, monitoring, and all those other things. How many users are there? How many groups are there? How many applications and how many devices? So you can see all those things in the overview. If you click on that, you will get to know who's that particular user, where on earth is that user from, and everything. So you can have this thing. So the what does this do, right? What does this particular thing do? Azure AD Connect. AAD Connect is a hybrid entity solution, spans on premises and cloud-based capabilities, creating a common user identity for authentication and authorizations to all resources, regardless of their location. So basically, offline to online connection. That's as simple as that. So it has many things. If you want to learn more, again, you can come here and you can just click on this learn more tab. It will open a new tab to you where you will be understood. For example, this is the picture that I was talking about a couple of minutes ago. So right, I had shown this to you in my PPT as well, but in a different form, right? So I'd given two squares and a connect in between. So here is the two things again. You can have a cloud sync. So if you want to study more, definitely feel free to see what are there are many more things. If I just sit and explain about AAD, just alone AAD, I'm sorry. So if I just talk about this thing, probably this 1 hour is nowhere sufficient for me, because there are so many things you can do. But again, due to the time constraint, and some things are not in the scope of your AZ-900 examination, but again, if you want to explore, then there is no limit, right? So again, here, right? So what is identity provisioning? On premises you have all these things. So I was talking something about identities and all those stuff, right? So you can understand them more here. So HR driven provisioning, you have AAD, and then on premises HR, and then how will you connect them, right? So how will you connect those two things together? Even that is here. Now, where are the couple of scenarios that you can use? Hiring new employees, employee attribute and profiles, employee terminations, employee rehiring. So this is where you can have, and then you have app provisioning again that I was talking about. Then there are a lot more other things. I would leave this to you guys to explore on your own, because it will be out of the scope of AZ-900, right? So for me, today's thing was to just explain you what are the different types of things that are available, what from an IT admin's perspective, right? If you are taking up a role in IT admin, and let's say if you are using Azure, so what do you have, right? So company branding, workbooks, again, log analytics, all those things. So this is given to you here. So this is something I wanted to talk about here. But again, that's not the end. You have many more things here: IT and management tools. You can see for monitoring and diagnostics. Again, you have things here in place, right? So you can just give a look on each of this thing. Again, Azure Active Directory, health check, all those things, right? So I won't go in much of this details now. Next thing that I was supposed to show you guys is um, the pricing calculator, the TCO, right? So I'll just go to the TCO. Let me just copy the link. I'll share this links with you later on towards the end of this webinar. Yeah, so this is what I was telling you. So you can define your workloads. You can just choose your the name. Yeah, what's the workload? One name, and then is it a Windows, Linux, and then what's the environment? What's the operating system? Everything you can add. Again, if you want more server workloads, you can add. This is for servers, right? So servers can be your a web app, or a Windows Linux thing, or let's say you have a database, you can add that. And then if you have another storage here, blob NAS/file, so you can do that. Networking, again, you can add here. So doing everything, you can just adjust the assumptions in the next thing. This is where you can convert it. Let me convert it to INR, and you can just sign in here, but I'm not doing that for now. I'm just giving you a overview of how things work, right? So you can, virtual machine cost can be done, and then electricity costs, storage cost, IT labor cost, other assumptions that you want to do, right? So you can do all these things. This is basically the TCO, right? The total cost ownership calculator. How can you do that? And then you can finally, if everything is done over 5 years for my particular resources that I've given so far, I don't even know what I've given, but that's a time frame. I'll just reduce to 1 year, and let me get it to India. Where is it? Anyway, no issues. Let's just keep it to East US, and then Microsoft Online Services Program, and here you go. So on cost premises, Microsoft Azure cost. Of course, Azure cost is not given because I haven't given whatever I'm using. So total on premises cost for this thing, total Azure cost. So don't follow this up right now because it is not clearly because I've not mentioned anything. But if you do that, this is how it looks. So this is how you can calculate your total cost ownership here. If you want to download a thing, you can just go here, and then a PDF will be given to you of all these 11 pages. So this is how you can have your TCO thing set up and running, and then you can help them improve. Is this helpful to you? Yes, give it a heads up here. You can participate in the surveys. This is your total cost ownership. If you want to know more about this, I'll provide you the link, and also I'll provide you the place where you can study more about this. So that will help you a lot. So next thing that I had to discuss here was the finally the pricing calculator. That was a total cost ownership calculator, but this is your pricing calculator. There's a slight difference here. So let me just share this tab instead. Right. So let me just check, is it done? Right. So this is your what is it called? The pricing calculator, right? So this is a pricing calculator. Calculator estimated hourly or monthly cost for using Azure. So that is the other thing was somewhere, you had your ownership cost, but this is something your hourly or monthly cost. So let's say example scenarios. I'll just go for an example scenario. So this is my example. Okay, let's say advanced analytics on big data, for example, or you can choose, let's say machine learning, right? All of us are a fan of ML. So let's just go ahead and see. I'm using this. So what is my pricing now? Okay, I'm just loading the estimate. It is, I've just clicked on this. This is a sample scenario. You can have your own scenario, of course, no doubt, but I'm just loading it for mine. Okay, so Azure ML, one D3, 4 cores thing, and then one node Power BI. Azure Monitor has this thing. AK has asked this thing. All these things are ready, and with this, you can see each and every cost. So monthly, I'll be incurring $167. Let me just, okay. Give me a moment. Right, currencies here. Okay, so here if you see now Azure ML, for this, of course, now if you want, you can delete it. This is your calculator, right? Cost calculator. So again, these things might vary. This is not for the basic thing. If you want for a basic thing, again you can change it. So it is 13,000 for this particular service, right? And then 60,000 for this Power BI, 3,000 for Azure Monitor, 7,000 for AKS, and Azure Synapse Analytics is, again, we spoke about this yesterday. So all these things included for support. If you want a developer support, if you want a standard support, if you want a professional direct, you can choose all these things. And then Microsoft customer agreement as well. uh, Let me just open this as well again. Right, so this is how it is. So finally, every upfront cost and monthly cost altogether, you'll have around these many rupees, right? So this is how you can calculate based on your resources, right? Just based on your resources. Let's say you want to do your own estimation, so then you can come here. Feel free to add in, remove. Let's say this is $0.20 per hour. uh, Let me just put it to INR firstly. Mm, yeah, here it is. INR. Okay. because dollars is confusing for me. So I'll just put it INR. Okay, where do you want the region to be in? Okay, yeah, here you go. Central India, operating is Linux, and then which flavor you want, and all these things, right? And how many hours? One virtual machines into how many hours do you need it for? So based on this, if you can choose 1 year saving plan and all these things. So finally, you'll get average cost, disks, transactions, bandwidth. You can even choose the bandwidth. Yes, you are right. So you can see outbound data transfer. If you want to increase it more, money increases here, right? And so you see, similarly you can go for okay, virtual machines, and then virtual machines support, do you want to support or not, and then you can choose it. That is for the example scenario, of course. So if you want to use, let's choose another thing here, um, IoT, for example, right? So Azure IoT Hub. So I've added this as well, so you can see how much IoT Hub does cost. So I'm just you choosing my resources, like go to a supermarket, choose what you want, your bill increases. Right? So that's how. Let's say Azure Digital Twins. Yes, so they have been added again, right? So digital twins is here, messages, operations, so on and so forth. So you can play around with this, not actually play around for now you can, of course, but let's say you're doing something seriously, let's say you're building your own startup, right? So you can come here and then use the pricing calculator to see how much does it actually cost. So that was about your pricing calculator. I hope you guys have understood. If you have any doubts, guys, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well after the session. If you want to get in touch with me, you can ask me there as well. So no problem. And before wrapping up the session, as it's the last day, and maybe many of you might be taking up your examinations after this, so I would like to guide you to one particular resource which will really help you in these times for your exam preparations. So that is your Microsoft Learn platform. So whatever I have covered in these 3 days, right? The bootcamp 1, 2, 3. Let's say you have missed day one and you have come to day 2 and 3, or you have directly come today. So don't worry. If you have missed this thing, one way is, of course, you'll get the link of this particular session later on, and you can follow it up. But in case if you want to do it at your own pace, so definitely you can visit Microsoft Learn platform, which is a very good platform. I'm pretty sure many of you must have used it. If in case if you are not, I'll just show that as well before wrapping it up. So along with that, there is Microsoft Learn TV as well, because Learn just has everything in a document format where you have to sit and study. There are interactive sandboxes where you can do things. Let's say you want something to be like a YouTube video, right? So from Microsoft again. So that is offered to you on Learn TV, and there are a couple of tutorials there. You can follow them, and these tutorials are curated to you by Microsoft experts, so you can follow it up there as well. Not just related to this, but let me just give you a small tour of Learn platform as well, and then we are good to wrap up the session. So give me a moment as I load it up. So browse all. So yeah, this is the link. So learn.microsoft.com. And once you come here, you can see this. So now here, let's say you are preparing for AZ-900, right? So you can select if you want a learning path or a module. So basically, module is something, a smaller chunk. Learning path is consisting of several modules, right? So modules consist of units. So this is one, and whichever thing you want to learn about, let's say Xbox, right? So it will show you you have gaming accessibility fundamentals, for example, based on your role as well. But now, since I am bothered about the fundamentals, so this is what I covered in these 3 days. On day one, we covered this particular thing, right? The Azure fundamentals, where we described all these things, right? So you can follow it up. This is like your notes, go to notes, right? You can do that, and there'll be something called as an exercise unit. I'll just show that if it is here. Okay, on day one it wasn't there. Let's check for day two. Here you go. This was describe this, right? So let me just go to this. Here you can see, again on the top you can see this path helps you to prepare for AZ-900. The best part is if you sign in, you'll get these many XPs, and At the completion of each learning path, you'll get a tiny trophy as well. Of course, a digital trophy, not a trophy delivered to your home. But again, that is the thing. And there are no prerequisites. Again, if you can follow up with this thing parallelly with these notes, trust me, there'll be no issues at all. So again, here we described what is Azure on day two, but we covered it on day one itself. And then computer networking services. So here you can see there's a tiny exercise how to create your own virtual machine, and you will be given your own sandboxes as well. Sandbox is something like a tool that helps you, right? So you can activate your sandbox, right? So this is how you can activate your sandbox, but you need to sign in. I'm not doing that right now, but you can have it done. This basically helps, gives you a temporary subscription only to that particular thing. Let's say you are using VM, so then you'll be just allowed to give your VM. Again, this is how Microsoft manages things along by teaching, giving out all those resources for free. So here there is storage services, there are networking services, and so on and so forth. So this is your overview for day two. And for day three, this is what we were talking about, right? So how can you use it for management and governance? Basically, we spoke a lot about that: total cost, ownership calculators. How do you estimate this? Again, I've covered both the theory and the exercises for you guys. Whatever I was showing you in the form of demo was basically the exercise, and whatever I was showing you in the form of the slides was the theory, right? So you can follow it up with that cost management tool. You can just see how is it used on Azure, right? And then there is other thing here: Azure policy blueprints. Again, these blueprints policies are something that, if you want to understand how does Microsoft show that uphold your privacy. Oh, with that, I think I forgot to show you another thing. I'll show that in a while. And managing your Azure, what is Azure Arc and all those things, templates, what is your Azure Advisor, what is your Azure Monitor, what is Azure Service Health, and all those things. So you can follow it up for day three. So these three learning paths, right? So these are the modules. So describe cost management in Azure. This 1000 XP thing is a module, but overall, this 3300 XP thing is your learning path. So if you complete these three learning paths, right? Whatever I just shown you till now, this one, uh, Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, describe cloud concepts, core cloud concepts, and then described Azure architectures and services, and also Azure management and governance. You'll be good to go for your examination, that is AZ-900. Now, I just had to show you another thing. I guess I forgot that. That was the Microsoft Trust Center. So let me just quickly show that. Again, if you go to Google and type, you'll get it, but no issues. I'll just show that here. Right, let me just check. Yes, you can see my screen. So I switched to my thing here. So this is that particular place where you can, this is called a trust center, and Microsoft Trust Center products and services that run on trust. Of course, trust is very much needed here. As I had explained one thing yesterday, how can you trust Microsoft that they don't take your data and sell it to anyone else, right? So I told you that there is an encryption there which happens, and you have the encryption key. No one else can access that, even not you, without that encryption key, right? So that is how it is. And this doesn't just show you about Azure, but also the other products and services. For example, Microsoft Power Platform, Dynamics 365, Microsoft 365, and Azure as well. So what are the things? Azure has Azure DevOps services, Azure Cognitive Services. This is for AI especially, right? So you can check the security, privacy, let's say for enterprise, for home, right? Let's say for business, what do they have in mind? So this particular month of November is basically for the cyber security awareness, right? So again, you can see security is critical for your business, so 300%, this is the thing. And then how do they give you, and you can try it out for free, the defender and all those things. What do they give you for security, right? So you can just see this. And then privacy, what is there for privacy here? I'll let it just quickly load, right? Privacy, risk management, all those things you can study here, right? I won't bore you here with much topics. They have given a very good walk around video as well, because covering all these things within an hour is really hard, because going through each and everything, showing you each subsection, it'll be somewhere out of the scope as well of this webinar. So I'm just touching everything so that I'm leaving this to you guys so that you can explore at your own pace, right? So this is your Microsoft Trust Center. So with that, I would like to wrap up today's bootcamp and this whole bootcamp of 3 days. I hope you guys have really enjoyed this bootcamp as much as I did, showing you around with Azure and all those things. So looking, and all the best for all of you who are taking up this examination. uh, yeah, and with that, thank you, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rand, for this amazing workshop. So I think there is no doubts, and yeah, Suhana liked the workshop. So thank you, Suhana, for that. And yeah, we can now wrap up the workshop. Thank you so much, Rand, for joining us and taking up the session. And
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kapish.
yeah, so guys, thank you so much for joining, and we will meet you with a new day, new workshop, and a new session. So thank you so much. Goodbye.